Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video. If you watch my YouTube channel, you know that my favorite comic book team of all time is the Suicide Squad. So I've taken upon myself to build my very own Task Force X and bring all the some of the best writers who've ever worked in the Suicide Squad, which I'll be introducing now. For those who don't know, Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad, are traditionally a team of incarcerated supervillains who must band together to perform covert operations and to occasionally save the world. Now, there's been so much hype around the Suicide Squad with James Gunn's recent film. So I decided, you know what, I'm friends with all these writers. We're practically best friends, dare I say. I think that's fair to say. Yeah, of course. I'm practically comic book royalty. It's the life of a comic book YouTuber. But yeah, I'm very lucky to have everyone here. And if you're a Suicide Squad fan, this is the video for you. But yeah, let me get into introductions. So first off, let me introduce John Ostrander. If you're a Suicide Squad fan, you know John Ostrander. It's fair to say that John is actually the creator of the modern day Suicide Squad. John came up with the concept of them being supervillains. John wrote the Suicide Squad from 1987 to 1992. His work in the squad was so amazing that James Gunn has cited John's run for a huge influence. And John also co-created Amanda Waller, and his run included characters such as Deadshot, Rick Flag, Bronze Tiger, Captain Boomerang, Enchantress, and so much more. John wrote stories such as Trial by Fire, Apokolips Now, War Crimes, and so much more as well. And he also wrote the crossover with Doom Patrol. And now let me introduce Rob Williams himself. Rob worked in the Suicide Squad during DC's Rebirth event. His work was fantastic on that series. His run includes characters such as Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Killer Croc, Captain Boomerang, Katana, Rick Flag, Enchantress, and much more. He wrote stories such as Black Faults, Burning Down the House, Earthlings on Fire, and a few more. He also wrote the crossover with Aquaman, and he created Amelia Harcourt, who appeared in the new Suicide Squad film, and Amelia will play a huge part in the new Peacemaker show. And last but not least, he is currently writing the Suicide Squad. It's the legendary Robbie Thompson. Issue 6 actually came out recently, which I have right here in my bundle. But his run has been so amazing. It's included characters such as Peacemaker, Talon, Bloodsport, Superboy, Rick Flag, and in the next issue, we will be joined by Ambush Bug. But he also done crossover with series such as Teen Titans and Swamp Thing. And yeah, it's all been fantastic, but I'm very delighted to have everyone on. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
I'm fine.
Glad to hear. So are you all immensely amazed by that brilliant introduction?
Yeah. I was.
Yeah. It does make us sound vaguely professional. It's kind of good.
Yeah, I know, doesn't it? I just, like I said, I'm modest, kind, perfect. I tend to just, I don't talk about these things much. But yeah, I'm so excited to get into this. So John Ostrander, I'll start with you, the legend himself. So John, so many different things I want to touch on. But you actually recently appeared in the film. I think if you were very eagle-eyed, you may have seen him. You injected the bomb into Savant's neck. So that must have been fun. But yeah, so what was it like getting to appear in the Suicide Squad film?
Yeah, well, script on to do. And what's interesting, the guy is Dr. Fitzgibbons, and that's fun because James Gunn has an old friend named Fitzgibbons who's in every film. He uses some form of him in every film. So I got to play Fitzgibbons this time around, and even got to meet my namesake at the party after the premiere. So that was all a great deal of fun.
Yeah, John, you have to get used to that premiere life, being a huge comic book writer such as yourself. But so let's get into the origins of the Suicide Squad. So John, how did the Suicide Squad come about to you? Did you get an email from the editor that said, do you want to work on a new series for DC, or?
Yeah, and I've told the story before, so if you've all heard it, sorry, but it's the story. Bob Greenberger was an editor at DC, and I was working at independent companies like First Comics, and he liked my work and wanted me to do some work at DC. So we were talking. Same time, Mike Gold went from First Comics to DC to be a senior editor, and he was assigned the follow-up to Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he wanted me to plot it. So that was all coming together at the same time. And I wanted to do, Bob said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to do Challengers of the Unknown, because that's one of the great comic book titles, Challengers of the Unknown. He said, sorry, somebody else has it. So he says, but we have this other title. It appeared in 5 issues of Brave and the Bold back in the 50s. Nobody's doing anything with it. You can do anything you want with it. It's called Suicide Squad. And my immediate reaction is, what a stupid name. Yeah, anybody who in their right minds would belong to something that calls itself a Suicide Squad? And then I went off and thought about it, and it occurred to me that people who don't have a choice might belong to a Suicide Squad. And who doesn't have choice? prisoners. Ooh, that means supervillains in the DCU. And supervillains are fun to play with because they're not nice people. You don't have to write Superman who's always good all the time. You can write a bunch of rotters. So, and from that also occurred to me, well, I've seen that before in the Dirty Dozen. So Dirty Dozen, supervillains, Mission Impossible, Suicide Squad. That's why I sold them, and we went on from there.
And of course, but Rob, you wrote the Suicide Squad during DC Rebirth, and I know you have an amazing story about how Jim Lee was on the phone to you and you didn't even realize it was for the Suicide Squad.
Oh yeah, well, I was writing Martian Manhunter, I think, for DC, and I got an email saying, "Oh, Jim Lee would like to have a conversation with you," and I was saying I didn't know what it was about, and it was crossed wires because Jim thought that I'd already been told that they wanted me to do Suicide Squad. So then Jim rings me one evening and is just basically saying, well, I think, it'd be a lot of fun if we did this, it'd be a lot of fun. And I was going, And just thought, if I make that noise long enough, I can cover for the fact that I haven't got a clue what he's talking about. Jim must have thought I was the rudest, sort of least demonstrative, sort of collaborator, because I was just going, yeah, okay, yeah. And then eventually, after about 5 minutes, the penny dropped, and I kind of went, sorry, are you saying you're going to be drawing this? And I'm writing it, and he said, yeah, has no one told you? I went, no one had told me. So despite that, I somehow still kept the gig somehow. And and we went from there, and it was just a lot of fun. But I think for John, what you were saying, it's just like maybe there's something in the water where your initial reaction to certain things is, oh man, that's really stupid. I don't know what I can do with that. And then that was Captain Boomerang for me, where I was kind of thinking, what can I do with Captain Boomerang? What a stupid character. And then I absolutely loved writing Captain Boomerang. He's just possibly one of the favorite characters I've ever written in my career. He's just so much fun because of all those things that make the Suicide Squad great, which is he can say and do the things that most characters in superhero comics just don't do. He's
my reaction was the same thing. Bob Greenberger was the one who brought him on, and my reaction was the same as yours. I mean, he wears a cap that you would put on an ice cream guy, and a blousy tunic, and he throws boomerangs. Stupid can you get? But like you, I grew to love him very quickly. And a bit of truth here, while I tried to pretend it was not so, there were three characters in my version of the squad that I was never going to kill off: Amanda Waller, Deadshot, and Captain Boomerang.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I wanted to, so I'd move on after this, but I wanted to kill off Captain Boomerang in the first issue because I thought he was just, I didn't know what to do with him. So in my first issue, we had like the squad uncover. You have to break into an underwater prison, and there's this sort of black ball of a portal, and they don't know what's in it, and it turns out that it's General Zod. And General Zod, the first thing he does is incinerate Captain Boomerang. And then they kind of went, DC said, no, you can't kill him off. He's in the film. We need him. So, okay, I'll bring him back. But I was so glad we did, basically. It was just an absolute joy to write him from that point on.
He always comes back.
Yeah, exactly.
Rob, did you have characters too, like John said, that you were like, I won't kill these characters, like in your run, like were you like did you have a soft spot for any that you were like, because I find like as I'm writing it now, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to kill, I don't want to say, because it's ongoing, but I like character X, Y, and Z. I have a similar feeling to John. Did you have that when you were in your run?
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead, John. Sorry.
Sorry, all the time. In fact, if I, one of my rules was I couldn't kill them unless there was something in me that didn't kill them. I had to put something in the character.
I see.
And James Gunn does this very well too. If he doesn't if the reader doesn't care whether they live or die, then it has no impact on the story. So I had to care first, and yeah, all the time. There were characters that I would kill, and I go, or I knew I was going to kill, and I was going, God, I'm having such fun with them now. I really am sorry that I'm going to kill them, but I did.
Yeah. Yeah. From my point of view, I mean, I think they said at the start, because of the first Suicide Squad movie was coming out, they said you can't touch Harley, Deadshot, and who else? Someone else, I've forgotten. No, because I wanted to kill Boomerang. They just wouldn't let me. I think from that point on, there was a kind of, I think it's always the balance, isn't it? I mean, you guys know, is by the nature of it being the Suicide Squad, someone's got to get it. I think that was in my initial pitch very early on. You know, you've got the promise of a premise. They said someone's got to go.
Yeah.
But then, if it's anyone of note within the DC sort of playbox, you're not allowed to kill them off. So you've got to make people care about these lesser characters, which is part of the fun of a gig, I guess.
Yeah, and Robbie, is it the same for you? Oh, sorry, John.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you know, that was also part of the pitch when I put it in. It's like, if it's called Suicide Squad, people have got to die. And I only wanted C or D list characters because I wanted ones that no one else would care about, and that I could do anything with. You know, it's like, hi, characters, I can do that, and I can kill them if the story needs for me to do it.
Yeah.
So same thing.
Yeah,
I'm sure you had the same thing as well.
And so, Robbie,
I'm finding now, like I'm 6 issues in, and I'm finding now that there's characters that like I can't wait to kill, and then there's characters that I'm like, oh no, please don't make me kill this character. But it's interesting. I think the way you put it is perfect, which is like, as soon as I start, you know, liking these characters, it's not a good sign for their survivability, you know. And then sometimes it's different reasons why I like them. Sometimes it's, you know, like, you know, Rob, like you were saying about Captain Boomerang, like he can say certain things that other characters can't, you know, like when you have a character like that is sort of a fun, you know, character to sort of channel some things through. You know, you sort of miss that as a writer. But yeah, it's been a similar experience. I'm the rookie on the team, but it's been a similar experience thus far.
Yeah, one of the great things about Captain Boomerang I found was he's actually the best mentally adjusted person on the team, because he knew who he was and he liked it.
Yeah.
You know, and he was a rotter, and he tended to go on being a rotter, and he was perfectly happy with that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like no one notices these things, but because I did a little 8-pager early on with Ivan Rice Drew. I did a beautiful job on, and it was just a backup, and I was trying to go into his background, and it was just thinking, well, why is he the way he is? And kind of thought, well, he was abandoned out in the outback by his Marine father, and his father never came back. So what does he do? He spends all his time, the rest of his life is things coming back, making things come back, boomerangs, you know. And the moment I had that, I kind of went, oh God. And it's just, it's a case in point of, even like you say, John, I guess if it's a B or a C-list character, you find something in them that actually make, you know, some heart that makes you respond to them and makes other people, and suddenly they're your favorite character, even though you never would have thought that would be the case.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think every writer who spends time with characters and invests something into them, you know, like has to put something of themselves in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to something like the Suicide Squad, you know, and I like the aspect of them being villains, because, you know, you see this in stories all the time. No one's evil for the sake of evil's sake. No one's evil for evil's sake. And so it's like fun for you to say, okay, well, why does this guy act the way he does? Why does he hate this thing, or why does he do this? And kind of give these characters more depth. Because, like, John, I know when you came on, these were just like obscure Flash, Batman villains, and like Robbie, you've had a lot of fun playing that, and Rob, of course. And so it's fun for you guys kind of give these villains, I guess you could say, you know, ulterior motives, and, you know, give them new aspects.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it's one of the appeals of the job to me. I having heard both of these gentlemen talk too about it as well, it's like when you have these characters, you know, that are the baddies, to find something, you know, that's either worth writing about, or, you know, them trying to find their own identity in these impossible situations. You know, John, you know, your reference point for, you know, the Dirty Dozen is so like, is, you know, when with that plus SuperVillains was like the peanut butter and jelly, I think, of all of this. You know, it was two great tastes that go great together. But you know, I love that movie as a kid, because these were ostensibly the bad guys, but they're forced to do the right thing, and not all of them do. Like, you know, every dozen's got its Telly Savalas, right? Like, you know, you've got a character that maybe is just there to have a good time, and that's a fun thing to play too. But to be able to take some of these characters, and again, John, I think you put it great, which is like, once you take control of them and they're not tied to the Bat office or the whatever office, and you can just kind of drive that train, it's really fun to take them to places that they hadn't normally been, and in some cases to build them up, to cut out their legs from underneath them, and then some cases to build them up and see where they may take a place in the DC universe afterwards.
One of my purposes also was to show that the villains actually could be capable if left to their own. Otherwise, they're just patsies, and the superheroes are bullies for beating up on them. But if we could show that they're a genuine threat on their own, then if they went back to the other books, then they are a more credible threat.
Yeah, absolutely. So can everyone see me okay?
Sure.
Oh yeah, sorry, my connection just broke out a little bit there. But yeah, so one of my favorite things about Suicide Squad is, despite the fact that there are some serious concepts, it's also a very funny comic. Like, you all have these ongoing jokes. So what was that one joke that after you look back and you're like, I'm proud of? Rob, for you, it has to be the Killer Croc being afraid of heights and always getting sick.
It was a lot. I mean, it was just, I mean, the comedy side of it was part of it. I mean, they're just, as much as them being supervillains, I always felt like it was a funny book and just needed to be a funny book. Yeah, but with a dark kind of comedy too. I don't know, it's too many running jokes. I had sort of, well, like Captain Boomerang's sort of general stupidity, Killer Croc to heights and vomiting anytime they took him into space and things like that, which is fairly broad stuff. But then again, he's Killer Croc. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you guys have them too. But it was, yeah, the comedic side, and I think this, that's in John's original run too, right? It's just kind of they're kind of their smart asses, you know what I mean? Or, it's just it's who they're gonna be.
Yeah, it's the pie in the face gag that I think we ran it for about 1.5 years before we finally resolved it. And that was also part of the fun of it, is how long can I stretch this out? And the fact, of course, it turned out to be Boomerang. Well, by throwing a Boomerang pie so that he would pie himself as the second person after Waller, in order to disguise the fact that he was actually the Mad Pie Man. And that was great fun.
Oh, I've just remembered, one of my favorites was the fact where General Zod was completely mad when he came out of the negative zone, and Enchantress, her alter ego, June Moon, was a graphic designer, and she said, I'm not a supervillain, I'm a graphic designer. And he didn't know what that was, and he would say, die, graphic designer. And I ran that for many issues with General Zod, didn't know what a graphic designer was and was annoyed by it, which made no sense.
Robbie, for you, it has to be the new. You recently touched on this in our previous interview, but you have a new bit with. Sorry, what is it? It's I think teleporters.
Yeah, we have a lot of teleportation in our book, and there was always a character for I think the first 3 or 4 issues that was the team's teleporter, and they all died horribly. And but I think it was like the 3rd or 4th time Peacemaker asked the new guy if he's ever seen Spinal Tap, because he's sort of getting a drummer vibe from those guys. So yeah, that. But just to touch on what Rob said, like there's a gallows humor to these kind of books that's really fun to sort of sink your teeth in. When people have nothing to lose, they're if they had filters to begin with, the filter is completely gone. And again, that goes back to to John, to what you established on the book so early on, which is like that, again, that darker humor that really lends itself to people that are in life or death situations.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that is that the dark humor seems to fit our era very well. Everyone seems to have this sort of gallows sense of humor. It's part of how you cope with life in this era.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, obviously humor being such a huge part of the Suicide Squad. And John, so I know, looking back at your run, like, obviously it's rooted in some real, like, political things and social justice and all these different concepts. So is it tough for you to make this book, like, with all these insane characters, comedic, but also give it some heart and give it some personality?
Yeah. Again, it's a balancing act. You want to throw all that stuff into it, because that's what people respond to, because that's your reader's life as well. They don't have just one thing or this thing. They got a touch of everything. And by throwing in as many of these things, the reader responds and says, yes, that's my life as well. And you want the reader to do that, because that way they are identifying with the book, with the characters, and it's like there's an electric circuit that is completed between you and the reader. And I like doing that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so something else that I love about the Suicide Squad is that, you know, if you read a Suicide Squad comic, odds are someone's going to die. So my question for each of you is, what's that one death that you wrote? Because I definitely have my favorites for each of you. But what's that one character you killed and you were like, oh yeah, this is an awesome way for someone to go? What's that?
It's all. I can sort of dodge it by going, well, it'll always be the next one, you know. But that's sort of a challenge, you know. Like, how can I make it worse next time?
I mean, Slipknot's
I
way
guess, you know,
was brilliant.
I sort of killed. I killed Rick Flag and didn't kill him with an atomic bomb. So that would seem to be pretty complete. I'm trying to.
I like Slipknot. I believe it was like somewhere where Captain Boomerang.
Oh yeah.
And that was replicated in the film. He said to Slipknot, "Listen, look, this is all a load of crap. But these bombs, they don't work." And so Slipknot says, "Yeah, you're right." And so, you know, and then what was it like getting to see that in the film? And then Slipknot said, "Yeah, okay, he's lying." And he ran away and he got his arm blown off. And Captain Boomerang was like, "Okay, so they're not messing." And was it like get to see that replicated in David Ayer's film?
Not only is that one of my favorites, but they used it in the first film. And when they started to go into it, I go, "Oh my God, I know exactly what this is," and they're looking directly from the comic, and I was very pleased.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like Rob, for you, it has to be Captain Boomerang because it was just these two stumps of his legs remaining. That's such a like visceral image. So, what was your favorite that you got to write for?
Well, that was fun, and then there was a second panel which Jim Lee drew, which was there was a two stumps steaming, and then one of the comics does very well, just like going sequentially from one thing to plop. But no, I mean, I actually what was kind of a fairly heartbreaking one was I came up with a new character called Hack, who was in something like the first 15 issues of my run, and really kind of tried to do that cruel writer thing of building her up to someone who I liked anyway and cared about. And she was actually kind to Boomerang, showed him she was one of the few people to be kind to him. So when Boomerang killed her, it was fairly heartbreaking for Boomerang and, you know, and for the writer as well, a little bit. It's one of those ones you kind of go, oh, I feel terrible doing this. But you know, if it's affecting you, hopefully it's affecting the reader in the same way, you know.
That was absolutely an amazing moment, and I'm gonna try and find a page there. But Robbie, like for you, like it has to be Film Freak in issue 1, where he ends with because for those who don't know, Film Freak, he's just this guy who quotes films. He's basically useless, but he quotes films, so we keep him around. But he gets obviously he gets some Joker toxins, and as he dies, he says, "That's all, folks." So Robbie, was that your favorite death to write for?
No, I took that one personally because I'm a film freak in my own life. So to have the guy who was quoting movies get killed off in issue 1 was a bummer. I don't want to spoil anything, but I have a death coming up of a character that I really, really actually enjoyed writing. And Ambush Bug is sort of involved in the aftermath of that in a way that I found at least myself amusing. And I'm hoping other people do. I think the one I felt the worst about, though, was recently I killed a character that we had introduced in the book called Branch. And I know that someone on the Zoom call was a fan.
I'm not even going to start. I'm not even going to start. Oh, I am so angry about that decision. It's a good creative decision, but I've grown to love Branch because he's basically just this kid who's experimented on, and now he's like basically half tree. And then he gets ripped in half by Ultraman, and it's just like, oh, shot through the heart. Oh, I can't believe that. But I suppose that's very nature of the squad.
When you told me you liked him, I had already written that part last time we chatted, so that was my best poker face. So sorry again about killing off Branch.
Just that was spite, was that it? Yeah. But yeah.
No, it was done before.
Rob, here's this part you're talking about where Captain Boomerang kills Hack by stabbing her with a boomerang through the heart.
Yeah, but he felt bad about it, so it's redeemable, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we all make mistakes. We all stab someone with a boomerang occasionally. It's what
who among us has not? No,
yeah.
It just happens. But yeah, no. So like, and that's the thing there. Like, we do see these villains do villainous things because it's the very nature of the Suicide Squad. So for like John, let me ask you this: did you know from the very start you wanted to keep these guys villains, and some would maybe change, but some would have to stay villains, and at their very core, they are villains?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason that you want them for the squad is that they're going to do things that the heroes don't, won't, or can't. You know, these guys and gals usually don't even think twice about it. just go ahead and do it. And that's, so many DC heroes, particularly when I was growing up, was they had this code against killing. Not the Suicide Squad. They'll kill at a drop of a hat. Like life means nothing to them. In fact, that's one of the things about Deadshot when I was putting them together was because he only had like a half page in Who's Who, so I was free to add anything on to him that I wanted. And I had seen a television with an actual hitman who was in prison. And God, this is the coldest dude I've ever seen in my eyes. I mean, dead eyes, just dead eyes. And basically he was saying, yeah, sure, it doesn't bother me because my life doesn't mean anything to me. So why should your life mean anything to me? And I said, okay, there's Deadshot. His life, it's not that he's suicidal, it's just his life doesn't mean anything to him. And so nobody else's life is going to mean anything to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Rob, was that the same for you? Because you did have that moment where Captain Boomerang killed a fan favorite. So it kind of makes you ask, is this a good person? Should we like this person? So did you always want to keep them as villains?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, that's who they are. And again, it's just, I think, one of the great things. I mean, you look at like shows that I absolutely love, like Sopranos and Deadwood. With key in this is sort of, you can, even the worst characters, you can find something fascinating and redeemable, and on one day they can do something good. You can like them, you can think these, and then the next day they can do something absolutely appalling. And I think that's part of the drama of the book, and why the book works is they pull you in, these characters, but they are not Superman, they are not Batman, they're terrifying, and if in the right circumstance, and you've got Amanda Waller at the head of it, with just more fascinating characters in all of comics, because she is sort of using them, as weaponizing them for her own ends, and then that's what her motives are, is fascinating in its own regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Robbie, is it the same for you? Because you're on issue 6 right now, but do you want your attention track book to keep some of them as villains and some of them won't change, or what's that like for you?
I think that's the fun, like both Rob and John said, of the book is, and again, in these classic Dirty Dozen kind of style scenarios, you're kind of hoping they do the right thing, but how long does that last? They might do the right thing for this mission, but the next mission is not as appealing to them. Obviously they're motivated, with a bomb in their necks, but watching that sort of, I think, push pull, and I think Rob touched on it really well with, like, when you have an relationship with characters, and my day job is in TV, but like I always cite like Breaking Bad, amazing, that main character, and I'm always fascinated when people are binge watching it now. I won't spoil anything in case anyone hasn't seen it, but like I always ask, like, hey, are you still rooting for Walter White? And usually it's like several seasons in, and I'm always like, you remember the time he melted a guy in the second episode? and yet you have empathy for him, because had he just gotten his cancer after Obamacare had been passed, he would have been fine. He would have had health insurance, but because he was in such a desperate spot, it pushed him into this desperate situation. And then ultimately it showed him who he really was. And we get to go on that journey with him, as an audience. And I think that's always the appeal of these things too. For me as a writer, and a movie, like one of my teachers always said, a movie answers a question and a TV show asks the question. And I think it's a similar thing with comics, which is, you're asking these questions like, are you just inherently evil if you do one bad thing? Like a lot of the characters that we have are sort of red shirts in Suicide Squad are people who just did like one bad thing, and like they're sort of wrestling with, am I the baddie now, and how bad was the thing that I did? I think that's always fun to explore as a writer.
Yeah, but Branch did nothing wrong, for public record. He's just an angel, and Robbie's a heartless killer. So yeah, on that segment, let me move it. Now, many messing around. But yeah, no. So like you brought that up there, that whole aspect, especially on the characters like the Suicide Squad. You kind of have to depict them as villains. And so, like, John, from the very start, you said you wanted to use them as villains, but did you always want to use C-listers? Like, if they offered you the Joker or someone, would you have said, okay, I'll add Joker to them, or were you very sure you wanted it all to just be C-listers?
I didn't want Joker.
Really?
No way I wanted Joker, because he was too big of a name, and the Batman office had tight control on him. The closest to a big name villain that I used was Penguin in the one story, and he had to come back alive no matter what else I was doing. So that was all right. One, okay, but to use others would be just no. You know, I have no control of them. If I can't kill them, I don't want them.
Yeah, and so like Rob, I know for your run, did you feel the same? Because I mean, the characters at the same time you're kind of used in the villains, in the big films. But so did you like? Because I mean, some of these characters, like, they're not exactly Batman or Superman of the world. They're not known by everyone. So did you try and play into that, or what was that like for you?
Well, I mean, one thing John has mentioned there, which is interesting about when you work for DC or Marvel, is the big characters are almost like movie stars. You kind of go, occasionally you kind of go, oh, can I have it? No, they're not available. It's like their schedule is kind of full or something, you know. And even if you are, then you're limited in what you can do with them. There's a lot more freedom when you don't care that much about a character. Then you've got free reign to do whatever you want. Yeah, it's no, I don't think. I mean, I think early on I may have asked, look, you know, is Joker available? I'm saying no, he's not available. Right, fine. And then you find other things, because I think I was thinking about Harley, because I'd never written Harley before, and Harley's obviously a big deal for DC. I was thinking, well, what can I do with Harley? And as a result, I came up with this sort of romantic kind of thing with her and Rick Flag, which seemed like a really interesting way to go, because Rick Flag is, whatever the Joker is the absolute polar opposite, you know, goes 360. So sometimes, because you're forced into a corner, you come up with far more interesting things. And what, you know, I mean, what is there to do with Harley and Joker that hasn't already been done brilliantly before, you know? So yeah, B-list and C-list in whatever form sometimes pushes you into your most interesting work, I think.
Yeah, Robbie, is it the same for you?
Yeah, I think, you know, what Rob said is perfectly put. Like, it is kind of like, of course you want the movie star for your book. Like, if you can put Batman on every cover, you're gonna sell a lot more. But then you have about 50, you know, Batman emails that you have to answer. And like, I got to write Batman like once or twice, I think, in Suicide Squad, and it was great. But those were the most, you know, looked at pages. And I actually wanted to pitch a book. I think we talked about this before, where, because every note with the Batman office is like, oh, like, this is fine, but Batman would have known that. So we got to make sure that Batman is the smart. And I'm like, can we just do a book called Batman: Dumb? It's 4 issues, and it's the one time he was the dumbest person in the story. And it's like, it all works out, the Justice League or whomever saves the day. But like, every step he's like, oh, I forgot to put gas in the Batmobile, or, you know, whatever it was. It's just every dumb thing just once. So yeah, it's a lot more fun when you have, as John said, a little bit more free reign. And on a book like this, the reign goes from 0 to, as he said, like, to death. So to know that you have that control over them is the most important. And I have my old binder of who's who, you know, the ones that they did with the 3-hole punch, and I just leaf through that and try to find somebody. And if they're, the only hard part is finding out if they're alive in whatever current continuity we're living in. So yeah, it's definitely a similar experience. You want, as the one thing that's great about, I think, working on this book, as Rob touched on, which is like, when you're universe, there's so many more collaborators. But in some ways, if your team is built the right way, Suicide Squad is kind of a closed, you know, loop, and you can have a little bit more freedom than you would on a book like Justice League or you know, Teen Titans or something like that.
Robbie, I love your notion about, you know, a dumb Batman. It reminds me, there was a movie sometime back in which a Sherlock Holmes movie in which Sherlock Holmes is as thick as a brick, and Watson does and builds up. So you could do the same thing with Batman and Alfred.
Yeah. All right, well, you and I will write that. I'll call, like, let's get the Bat office on the phone, and you and I can crack that.
Let's pitch it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if we're bringing back, you know, like, all these different worlds through the new Flash movie, why not?
Yeah. I wish, and I think DC, having worked for both of them, does, I think, in a way, and obviously with the What If, a lot of these kind of closed loop stories, whether it's an Elseworld or, you know, whatever, and I think they those characters really lend to that kind of interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely. So you heard that happen here. So if you ever make that book, I need some of those sweet, sweet royalty checks, split some me and Rob's way, see Rob
Yeah,
looking
of
out for
course.
you, we got to make that
Of
sweet,
course.
sweet dough. But what am I talking about? You're all rich, everyone knows comic book writers are the richest people in the world.
Oh, yeah,
You all nodded in agreement. I could see it there.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you bet.
John, but another thing I want to touch on now, this is just a question I have to ask. Is it Belle Rev or Belle Reeve?
Belle Reeve.
Right.
And it's also the answer to a trivia question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you may all know it, but there's a connection between Suicide Squad and Tennessee Williams, the American playwright. And the answer is Belle Reeve. How? A Streetcar Named Desire. The two sisters, their family home was a plantation named Belle Reeve, and they had to sell it. And so in my imagination, they sold it to a guy who then later sold it to the federal government, who built a prison on it. So there's a connection between Tennessee Williams and the Suicide Squad.
Amazing.
That's
Yeah, it is
canon.
amazing. And also, I now know that I've been saying it wrong all the time that I was.
Likewise.
I thought for sure it was Belle Rev.
And if I'd known that, John, I would have had a prisoner in a cell just shouting out "Stella" all the time.
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
so.
I've always depended upon the kindness of strangers. I actually once had an idea for Streetcar 2. She's back, she's mad, and she's not depending on the kindness of strangers.
Very good.
Pitch it to DC, make it a public domain character, sweet, pitch it to Image. I'm sure they'll take it. But yeah, and so
Daniel, can I ask a question? So considering you love the Suicide Squad so much and you're asking us these questions, would you like to write the Suicide Squad?
Yeah, oh man, absolutely. Would I like, yeah. If I ever do get to be a writer, Suicide Squad, #1 bucket list.
Okay.
Except it would be Condiment King. He's this dude who shoots mustard and mayo. I don't bring him up much on the channel. I'm only messing. If you watch my channel, I bring him up all the time. So he shoots ketchup. Now that I have you all here, let me pitch this, right? So he just shoots people with ketchup and mustard. Do you need any more?
No, that's 50 issues right there.
Yeah. I will say the movie did use a character that I didn't even consider using at the time, Polka Dot Man. Because that was just too silly even for me. And they made it work wonderfully.
Yeah.
And so if I was going to do the silliest character, I would probably try to use now is Kite Man.
Yeah.
Yes. I think there should just be a comic where he says, no, I'm not going to take the helicopter. I'm just going to fly next to him and then get sucked into the propeller. And then that's just the end of Kite Man,
Yep.
He doesn't even have to get blown up because that's just such a Kite Man way to go. But yeah, he's an amazing character. We need some Kite Man and Condiment King team up. Editors call me. I've been emailing my editors, DC's editors, all these amazing ideas. They've yet to get back to me. I think their email's busted. It's the only plausible reason.
Yeah.
One will get through.
Yeah, absolutely. That I'm just waiting for that sweet. And then in 10 years, once that Condiment King film is made, I'll just be living off those riches, in a big mansion. You see, I have this all thought out. It's basically foolproof. Nothing can go wrong. But yeah, so speaking of films, John, another thing I want to touch on. All right, Amanda Waller, such an amazing character. I think it's safe to say that everyone on this panel loves her. So how did Amanda Waller come about as a character? What made you say, I need to create this person who controls the Suicide Squad?
Well, in creating the squad, you had to have some person who was in charge. So it was given that they would have to be tough, very tough-minded, very strong-willed. And because there was no one like this, I wanted the top person to be female, Black, and approximately middle-aged. And I also wanted her to have a certain heft because, to my mind, that conveyed visually a strength there, that she was impressive, that you wouldn't want to cross her. In fact, in some ways, she's based a little bit upon my paternal grandmother, who, wonderful lady, I loved her, but oh man, if you messed up at the Thanksgiving dinner table, you got the stare. And so, and that would terrify me. So, so that's sort of where she came from, but also because there was no one like her at the time. And I'm proud to say there hasn't been many like her since. My favorite Suicide Squad cover for Amanda was, I think, issue 10, where she's backing Batman up against the wall with just her finger And I went, that is pure Amanda. You know, that in one visual says everything you need to know about her.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, she's such a ruthless character. So getting to see her in the film, was that like, oh, pinch me? Because she's been in the film twice. So was that a bit of a surreal moment for you?
Well, hell, when I heard that they're casting Viola Davis and for the first one, I went, okay, they're taking this seriously, because you know, that's big leagues. You know, like her, some of the other actors in it, you went, okay, serious about this. Unfortunately, then they just messed around with it. But and David Ayers, who's a very good director, I would love to see his version of that first film. But and one of the great things for James Gunn is, you know, he had total authority to do what he wanted, and boy did he do it. And you see the result, I think.
Yeah,
I was watching David Soderbergh's version of Solaris the other night, and Viola Davis turns up in that, and the moment she's on screen, you kind of go, "Wow!" I mean, she's just one of the most amazing screen presences I think we kind of have. So to have her as Amanda Waller is just an amazing bit of casting, actually. But that first film, you know, there were certain things. What ended up on screen didn't end up perfectly, but that was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Rob, another thing I want to touch on, Amelia Harcourt, character you created, you and Jim Lee, she appeared in the film. What's that like? Is that a bit surreal for you?
Yeah, it's kind of odd. Yeah, it's I'll be interested to see. Apparently, Jim tells me she's a big part of the Peacemaker TV show that James Gunn has done, and she is a major player in that. I'm told. That's all I know. So that'll be exciting as well. But it is kind of surreal. I mean, it is the first time that's happened to me. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about it. It's great. Don't get me wrong. It's all positive. It's just it does seem a bit otherworldly, really. I don't know.
It's sort of like you've got a kid and they've gone off into the world and they're doing things without you and not cleared with you. And it's like, okay, I guess they're big enough now to do that on their own.
Yeah, it's kind of it's all good. It's all nice. I mean, Amelia Harcourt was a character just to come in and just butt heads with Amanda Waller. So she's not, you know, not one of those characters I would have thought would have this big life beyond. But James Gunn knows what he's doing. I'm sure she's going to be a very interesting character if she is a big part of a Peacemaker TV show.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Robbie, the nothing I want to touch on now, considering with the new film being out, and your run obviously includes a lot of the characters from the film, like Peacemaker and that more recently Bloodsport. And so, without spoilers, after watching the recent film, have you come away thinking, "Oh, that's an interesting take on Peacemaker, and it's different to mine"? You know, have you kind of seen that?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I was already writing the comic by the time the trailer dropped, but you know, I'm a big James Gunn fan. I think he's a really talented writer and a really great filmmaker. And to John's point, I knew that if he was given the keys to this, he was gonna drive the car really fast and very dangerously. So I kind of had a sense from the trailer. I didn't really know much from DC editorial. There's kind of a separation of church and state about what one part is doing and the other. But you know, you cast John Cena as Peacemaker. It's a very clear choice that he's going to be a bit of a heel. And same with Idris Elba, that you know there was going to be a more. It felt to me like that's an actor you give someone to have a pretty clear arc in the movie to carry some emotional weight. And so I leaned into that a little bit, but I didn't know where they were going. We go in a completely different direction with our Bloodsport, but it definitely informed that. And I think, you know, we were trying to kind of lean into the dark humor of the book, but a little bit of the humor that you also find in James's movies that I think is just very unique to him. Like you see that movie and there's no release the gun cut, like they released it. It was enormous in IMAX and glorious. You know, so I definitely walked away. I think that the thing that informed me the most though was probably and it was from the first movie was Viola Davis. Like just the way she plays Amanda Waller is also kind of how, for me personally, I always read the character. But then she's also Viola Davis, and she's like one of the greatest actors, period. So the intensity she brings to it, and I think, in my opinion, the humanity that she brings to it, which is, I think, always the undercurrent of Amanda's character, which is always the fun part to pull out. That was probably the biggest inspiration from both movies.
Yeah, I mean, that's something actually I sort of just remembered. But John, that's pretty amazing, that Amanda's backstory that you wrote, and and that kind of that layer that's always there. It's not just, she's not just some badass, hard ass, whatever you want to call it. There is a tragic core there, and she's trying to defend, in her mind, other people and stop them going through what she went through, which is a pretty, she's an amazing character.
And it's also why she doesn't like bad guys.
Yeah.
Bad guys killed off members of her family.
Yeah.
Your husband. These are bad people. Fine, I'll use them.
Yeah.
And I don't care if they die, because they certainly don't care if we die.
There's an old writing, I remember from film school, where it's the bad guy's the hero of their own movie, and there's no better version of that to me than what you did with Amanda from the beginning. Like Rob was saying, she is righteous in her cause, and she has zero doubts, which is a wonderful thing as a writer to get to play with and to continue to get to play with.
And she's completely ruthless.
Yeah.
And as you said, I think only once or twice I showed her with a touch of doubt, like when she decided she needed to be in jail for the things she had done, and then she decided she needed to be out. And she accomplished both. She's very straightforward. She goes boom. When she goes at something, she goes at it.
Do you think she's punishing them as well? Yeah, it's personal for her. It's it's not just means to an end. It's it's all a little bit of revenge, basically. And
that informs Amanda's character as well. There were those who claimed, even when I was writing her, that she was the biggest villain in the bunch, and I just never quite saw it that way. She had reasons for what she was doing, and she felt there were good reasons. So I defend Amanda.
Just have to. And I'm pretty sure she's the only character who whenever she's up against Batman, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that. She can come out on top on that, because she's terrifying. She's the last person I'd want coming after me.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, Robbie, also let's touch on issue 6. People can pick this up from their local comic book store, can they?
Yes, they can. It's also available digitally as well, but highly recommend, if you're able to, and if it's safe to do so in your area, put on a mask and go grab a comic or two.
Yeah. Look at that one moment. Branch dying. Can everyone see that?
Let it go, Daniel. Let it go.
No, I won't let it go. Now, let me tell you something about Branch. I suppose I just have to take in a deep breath. But yes, no. So in issue 7, we'll be seeing Ambush Bug.
That's correct.
Amazing character. What can you tell us about him?
I had one request. When you get these gigs, especially when it's tied to or in and around a release of a film, there's obviously some characters that the company wants to center, and Peacemaker and Bloodsport and some of the others are like that. Like you may see Weasel soon when they go to hell.
Awesome.
That belonged. But the only person I really wanted was Ambush Bug, because it just seemed to be completely absurd. And it's revealed. This is a spoiler, but another character asks Waller, where did you dig up this weirdo? And she says that he basically knocked on the door of what I called formerly Belle Rev, but is actually Belle Reeve.
Yeah.
And said he was quote there to audition for a movie, and basically volunteered. So my only hope in all this is that somehow he winds up in some live action version. I always loved that character. I always thought he was an interesting pest, and when I was a kid, it was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first characters that kind of broke that fourth wall and was talking to me. And I felt both excited and actually kind of scared by that. As a little kid, I was like, wait, is he really talking to me? So to have that, I mean, everybody in the book and Waller just thinks he's crazy. And he's also one of those characters that's kind of perfect for the Suicide Squad, because he can teleport by line of sight only. And is basically good at breaking the fourth wall. He's not exactly useful, but it turns out he was very useful for a specific mission in hell. So yeah, Amanda Waller sends him and the Suicide Squad to hell, and it doesn't go well for them at all, as it usually doesn't.
And they go and retrieve Condiment King. Is that what's going to happen?
Well, it's funny you say they retrieve. They definitely see some old friends when they're down there. The last page of that issue, you'll definitely see some familiar faces that I think might bring a smile, particularly to your face. So yeah.
Can't wait for that. You know, we'll have to wait and see who that is. But at the end of this, we see an amazing little moment where they go to a different Earth, and Superboy comes across an alternate version of himself. I mean, that's some great.
Is it an
stuff.
alternate version of him, or is it the real Superboy? You'll have to buy issue 7 to find out, or sorry, the annual to find out. Yeah, this was like one of those things, because we had so much runway. There was a bit of a delay of the book, obviously with COVID and lockdowns, but usually I don't have this much runway. So this was something, you know, we had talked about over a year ago, just so to finally get to that moment and have maybe the real Superboy, who knows? I guess you'll find out in the annual, show up was very gratifying.
That is amazing.
There's a lot of Superboy fans online were not pleased.
Oh man,
at the beginning of it, which to me, I don't know about you guys, but was a good sign that we were doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you have to, every once in a while you go, yeah, I'm going to piss off the fanboys, and sometimes just for the hell of it.
Yeah. I mean, we're all kind of Amanda Waller in our own way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just drink the tears of the fanboys, you know, that's what you know.
I do. That's literally what it is.
So, Daniel, what other characters do you really like? Because then we can have fun with you.
Yeah.
What? No. What's happening? Is there a sniper dot on my head? What? This is all flipped around. I meant to be the Amanda Waller here. I knew it. I knew it was a bad idea bringing you all together.
This is the third act twist. We turn upon you.
Yeah.
Wait, but like what? This is so crazy. I did not expect this one to come. But yeah, no, Rob, I also want to touch on this now. This is just a question. I know I love this story where you introduce Zod to the team.
Yeah.
And I loved in this one moment where towards the end, Zod was like, yeah, okay, you know, I'm Amanda Waller. Like, I mean, I may be crazy, but you take the cake for being the best leader, man. I'm out of here. Like, I can't handle this. And I think, like, it's for the fact for a Krypton to say, no, I'm not going to fight Amanda Waller. That's perfect. But so then how did that decision to bring Zod come about?
That was like the core of my initial pitch, which was effectively sort of trying to give Amanda a Faustian pact, but she suddenly she's got all these characters who are kind of like snipers and can throw a boomerang and giant hammer and hit people, and suddenly she comes across Zod and she kind of goes, hang on, I can have my own Superman here, and if I put a bomb in his brain, I can, you know, basically have a much further reach than I've ever had before. And then of course Zod can't be controlled, and once he's out of a box, suddenly it all goes very, very wrong. And in my original pitch, which we never got to do, Zod then sort of imprisoned, I think, just about every major hero in the DC universe in the Phantom Zone, and the Suicide Squad were effectively up and save the day. But I forget why reasons, behind the scenes reasons, we never got a chance to do that. But yeah, Zod was a lot of fun. At one point, we had him operating on his own brain with his laser vision. That was kind of fun.
Fantastic. I think I have a page here.
But it's kind of like, it's one of those behind the scenes things where DC were like, oh, I thought we had Zod for a while, and then you kind of get told, oh, the Superman office wants Zod back. You've got to do your entire story in about 2-3 issues, and you go, oh, okay, that was going to be a lot longer, and suddenly it all gets a little rushed. But yeah, he was a lot of fun to write. I mean, I kind of wrote in sort of, he'd been in the Phantom Zone too long and gone a bit mad, and that was kind of he was very egotistical, and that's always fun to write.
Look at him there, very on brain.
There he is, operating on his own brain. God bless him.
We can only dream. We can only dream to achieve such a power.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it was one of those. I'll move on from this, but it was one of those things where I think when I suggested it, I said, "Can I use General Zod?" And everyone in the office went, "Yeah, I don't think anyone's done anything at that time. I don't think anyone had done anything with General Zod for quite a while. He was just floating in the Phantom Zone somewhere." I was like, "Yeah, cool, okay." We
all know Captain Boomerang would take him out easily, you know.
Indeed.
It's just a matter of fact, he has to have those little sweet kryptonite boomerangs, you know. He just has he has a boomerang for every occasion, you know, just for every trip, like shark repellent boomerang, just all these different boomerangs he can use at different times. But yeah, so Captain Boomerang, right, really interesting character. And I know that like both of you, like John and Rob, at the start you guys were like, oh, I don't really want to write for Captain Boomerang. It seems like you're such an obscure character, and then you both managed to like fall in love with him. And so was that the only character for you that you were surprised at how much you love writing for? Was there one character you were like, oh, I really like this character?
Yeah, for me, because like I said, Bob Greenberger said, you know, well, Flash Office isn't going to use them, so I want them in anything. I went, no, come on. But I grew to really enjoy playing with them. And I will say that when I saw Jay Courtney, who played Boomerang in the movie, at the after party, I told him, I have a way to bring Boomerang back. And I do. And it's a very comic booky way. So, and yes, I'll just say it out loud. And Warner Brothers, if you use it, you owe me money. But he has a dimensional vibrating boomerang, because he has boomerangs, as you said, for everything. And just as during the attack of San, it's an experimental one, and it blows up. So it takes him dimensionally into another dimension and substitutes somebody else from that dimension into the movie. And that's the Harkness who dies, not our beloved Captain Boomerang.
I'm for it.
We need
you
Captain
introduce
Boomerang.
the multiverse into the DCEU as well, which is great.
We need that, Captain Boomerang. Just give him everything. Just give him a mini series. Just give him all of that. But Robbie, recently for your run, has there just been any character in particular that you surprisingly loved writing for? And I'll actually just need that in 1 minute.
Peacemaker, strangely enough. Because I was, the only thing I really knew about him was that he wore that helmet, and it just seemed kind of absurd to me. But as that character has sort of evolved into peace at any cost, and then again for me, I love John Cena. I just think Cena's the best, and the persona that I thought he might be imbuing that character with just seemed very relevant to our times, I guess is what I'll say. So yeah, that actually he ended up being a lot of fun to write. And same with Bloodsport, because these are two characters I just probably knew the least about. And then in doing some of my homework about Bloodsport, and then if you're sitting down and you're imagining you're writing lines for Idris Elba, it's pretty fun. So yeah, I've been surprised with those two guys that I've enjoyed writing those characters. I hope I don't kill them.
John Cena wore the costume to the premiere.
Amazing.
That's the commitment to that is especially with the weather we've been having here. It's really amazing.
He seems to be wearing it on every TV interview he's doing. He seems to be enjoying himself.
I think he's amazing. I'm surprised only you showed up in a Peacemaker suit. What?
I wear mine at home. I wear mine at all times. I just take it off for Zooms. That's it. So
yeah, of course. You stand up and you just the Peacemaker bottoms on with the belt, and you walk away. But yeah, no. So another huge aspect of the Suicide Squad is character dynamics. Especially just in any team book, there has to be maybe two characters who would have this very special dynamic or connection. So was there one character dynamic between two characters that you were like, oh, I kind of like this, a budding element of whatever it may be? Rob, for you, I really liked how you played with Killer Croc and Enchantress.
Yeah, that was fun. That was just a Beauty and the Beast thing. That was pure and simple. You know what I mean? It's just, I think it was sort of the most Killer Croc, the most he could express how romantic he felt towards it. He said, I want to eat everyone, but I don't want to eat you. And that's the greatest I love you that he could possibly say. So yeah, I really enjoyed writing them. And again, it's that thing of trying to find sweet notes within really, really horrible characters, because he might have been eating several people that day, but he did love the Enchantress, bless.
What an amazing relationship. But yeah, no. So John, was there two characters that you particularly loved the dynamic between during your run?
Two characters that I loved during my run?
Yeah, just the dynamic between them.
This is going to sound odd, but Punch and Julie, because they were so wacky. I actually wanted, I pitched a Punch and Julie special to DC as well, in which they retire and they go to the suburbs. They have a baby who they call Boozer or something like that, or Buster. They don't leave their costumes behind. They just put in things that would work in suburbia, and throughout the entire story and comic, you were really worried about what's going to happen to that baby.
Amazing. And so Robbie, for you, I mentioned this in our previous one, but Culebra and Talon, because Talon is kind of putting on this, crazy man facade, pretending to not say who, and Red X reveals that he can actually say more. So has that been your favorite dynamic to write for? Or are there two other characters? Like, I mean, Peacemaker and Superboy ahead, it's perfect. So what's that dynamic you've loved writing for?
I have liked Calebra's a character, and Talon, is presenting. He's sort of playing Possum. If Possum is, instead of playing dead, playing crazy, and so it's fun. I think you put it best last time. He's sort of like a Chewbacca to her Han Solo, which is always a fun dynamic. But actually, the character I've actually really enjoyed is Superboy plus whomever, because it's always fun in these books when you have someone who ostensibly is the quote good guy, and coming up against people like Peacemaker, who would gladly kill everybody in his way, or Nocturna, who would happily also kill people in her way. Bloodsport as well. They have a similar dynamic, and I think that's always fun when you have conflict within the group and you have a character that's conflicted. The Superboy in our story is obviously on a bit of a journey that's going to get even worse for him in the annual, but confronting, am I really good, considering my surroundings right now, is just a fun dynamic to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see more of that. I think Superboy is such an amazing addition to the team. And the thing I've noticed in all of your different runs is that the two characters who always pop up are Rick Flag and Amanda Waller. I'm not saying that they're the linchpin, but they're definitely the linchpin. I assume it's because none of you could get Condiment King, because obviously he has countless other, things he has to be doing. So I'm sure that's why. But yeah, no, so Rick Flag and Amanda Waller, what's it been like getting to write for them? Robbie, because I know you're doing like an amazing job, and maybe there's trouble in paradise there between the two characters. Because, Rick kind of has a different viewpoint.
They don't get along. Amanda is in this run, and it's part of a larger sort of DC story that's going on, is definitely putting the Ruth and Ruthless, I guess, and is going even farther, I think, in her mind anyways, but she's doing it for, as always, a good cause. And Rick is sort of kind of had enough, and they're definitely at odds. And in fact, Rick, who was thrown into Belle Reve and has now escaped it, thanks to Red X's help, is going to be forming a squad of his own, and so it'll be some squad versus squad, some Waller versus Flag. I think those are two foundational characters, and Flag in particular goes back to the the original squad, and to be able to have those kind of dynamics, I think are always really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, John, I know for you, Rick Flag was obviously a very huge part of your run. So was it fun for you to get to kind of explore this, man among all these crazy supervillains? Was it fun for you to get to explore Rick Flag as a character?
I feel in some ways that I never did full justice to Rick Flag. For me, I piled things on top of them, and I didn't find the places. Well, for instance, as Joel Kinnaman does in the new movie, he has a very dry humor, and it isn't until late in the movie that you see him really pissed off, and for very good reasons. So I don't know if I really did full justice to Rick Flag. I think if I was trying to do it again, I would find more things to do with him than I did.
Like,
I feel this. I feel the same, actually. Weirdly, it's just his one. It's a weird dynamic. I mean, because he is the straight man to the villains, right? On every mission. So you try and find you always try and find interesting things to do with them. But I agree with John. I never felt I 100% nailed him down. Perhaps.
No, I love
Robbie's idea of him going off and forming his own squad. That actually says something about the character.
Because he's got enough trauma in his past to really hate Waller. So yeah, that is a good focus. Yeah.
Yeah, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how much Condiment King is in it?
Condiment King, again, to use Rob's analogy, is the biggest star of the DC universe. So actually, you have to answer to like 10 offices. So I don't have the patience or the bandwidth for it. So hopefully, whoever takes over after my time is done can thread that needle. They're a better writer than I am.
Yeah, not saying I'm coming for your job, but I do have that 800-page Condiment King script on the way. You know?
We should do another one of these after your run, and then it'll be, you know, all of us asking you questions about the character.
Because he's such a complex character. Why ketchup? What is it about that? No, you see, it's a deep-rooted metaphor for human greed. You know, you probably won't comprehend, but once you have to put all these. No, I'm only messing around and stuff. But yeah, no, Rob,
I'm serious. I'm serious. I want to do this again, whether it's a year from now or however many years, where we get to talk to you about your run on it.
And we're all-star condiment king. You know, all the Eisners. How did you achieve this, Daniel?
I'll be honest, you know,
beyond his usual thing. You know, he has another spray gun full of special sauce. You know,
how did you know?
He can toss pickles. You know, and
does he change it at different countries? Because I know over there you guys use ketchup and mayonnaise for different things. Does it have different abilities? Are there other condiment kings in other countries?
It's a franchise.
You know, like,
it's very much a franchise.
Yeah, it's a brand. Yeah.
You know, different sauces for different occasions, you know. Not saying I'm a revolutionary, but you know, this is all coming together very nicely. We'll all pitch this to Image, you know, 4 of us get it out there. We already came up with all these brilliant concepts. I'm not saying it's the next Watchmen, but I'm not saying it's not the next Watchmen. So
this is clearly the next Watchmen.
Yeah, I think we have this all nailed here. But Rob, the moment I loved in your run was when Rick Flag sacrificed himself to close the negative zone. And then Amanda Waller replied in the most Amanda Waller thing, you know, altruism is not rewarded here. You know, let's move on. It's like,
sorry. So I forgot I wrote that, but that's quite a mean line, isn't it?
No, that's amazing. I was like, oh yeah, that's Amanda Waller. That's Amanda Waller to a T. But yeah, no. So obviously, so many different things touched on. But who was that one character now? Like I know Harley Quinn was kind of a recent addition, John. But I know, John, you got to come back for a story to write. Like I think it was a one-shot Harley Quinn story. What was it like to get to write her as a part of the squad?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat, please?
You know, Harley Quinn. You got to add her in a story. What was it like getting to write for her?
I wanted to use her because she'd been so prominent in the first movie, and she's a wacky character, you know. So I think for me, the moment that worked best when I wrote it was she goes up against Shadow, who's a ninja warrior, and her response is, "Ooh, you know kung fu. I know crazy." You know.
Yes.
And then I didn't show the fight. I deliberately did not show the fight because I wanted that to be in the reader's imagination. What would that be like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you did an amazing job. But looking back at your run, if Harley Quinn was an option, because I don't think she was created by then. Would you have used her if she was an option? Sorry, would you have used Harley Quinn?
I don't know. She might have violated my rules in that she was very much part of the Joker universe, part of much of the Batman universe, and maybe too prominent. So I wouldn't have had control to do what I wanted with her. On the other hand, using her that one time was a great deal of fun. She's fun to write.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think Boomy Butt is just a fantastic nickname for Boomerang. We should just call him that from now on.
Yeah, Boomer Butt. Yeah, Boomy Butt. Yeah, you know, I am sad that no one in the movies actually ever calls him Boomer Butt. So
shocking, you know, it's just disgraceful. Get that trending. We need that, you know. And but yeah, so many different things about Suicide Squad. He was like, I mean, looking back, you know, he was that one character you just had a really love for. And if you were presented with a chance, you'd maybe do like even just a mini series dedicated to this one character. Rob, who's it for you?
God. Good question. No, I mean it's probably. But what I've always fancied doing. I did 2 sort of one-offs where Boomerang was like James Bond figure of Agent of Oz. I called it, where he was like the James Bond of Australia. I thought I could I could do books and books of that. No one might read it, but I would enjoy writing it. Put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so John was that one character. Like I found myself, Bronze Tiger was a character I wasn't really pushed about, you know. But after reading your stuff, I have a few of your volumes here. I really liked him more as a character. So was there one character in particular that you really loved the most?
I understand, but I actually had another Deadshot miniseries in mind, which I was going to write, or that I wanted to write, and so I think that if I'm honest, I would want to do another Deadshot miniseries.
Fantastic. We need that.
John, sorry, this is my memory, but did you write you wrote the Deadshot miniseries in the 80s, which was like one of the darkest things. I couldn't believe when I read it. I think when I was taking over Suicide Squad, and I couldn't believe a DC published it. It was like you got away with some quite just some brave storytelling. Put it that way.
It was very noir. It was intended to be very noir. My late wife Kim Yale and I wrote it together, and we knew going in exactly what we wanted to do with it, and we played with the idea that somebody has kidnapped his son, and all the readers anticipate that he's going to save his son.
Yeah,
he doesn't, and he goes nuts. He goes ballistic. I mean, and one of my favorite Luke McDonald pages ever. And by the way, Luke is fabulous in that miniseries because he inks himself finally, and he really shows all the struggle. But it's after his son has died and he's killed the killer by shooting him to pieces, and then he just rips off, and he finds out that his mother is behind it all, and he rips off his mask and go, "Ma, I'm coming home, Ma." And that to me was just one of the most powerful pages in the whole miniseries.
So I'm taking over the interview, Daniel. I apologize, but did you get any pushback on when you were going to those kind of dark areas at the time, or no? Okay.
No, DC at the time was wide open. I mean, not only did Suicide Squad, but I did Wasteland as well, which was even darker than almost anything else I did. So and about as humorous as the Suicide Squad too. So this was right after Crisis, and Crisis was DC's announcement: "Hi, we're not your daddy's DC Comics anymore. We're going to bust everything wide open. We're going to take everything that you think you know about us, and we're going to change it. We're bringing John Byrne over from Marvel. We're doing from outside to do things, Mike Barron included." And so at that time, both with Dick Giordano and Jeanette Kahn, who was the publisher, things were very loosey-goosey at that time. You had a lot of freedom to do things, which I tried to abuse at every turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you all done so much, like countless other amazing comics. But so Robbie, for you, who's that one character from your current squad besides Branch? Obviously, I may not have talked about much, but I like Branch as a character. I think he's pretty cool. I'm very shy about my love for specific characters. But who's that one character that you just really want to give like a mini series to or something?
I mean, my whole MO on taking this job was I just wanted to put Ambush Bug on the team to platform Ambush Bug so I could write an Ambush Bug series. That was it. It was the only reason I took the job. I'm half kidding, but I love that character, and I always thought that given the right spotlight, he could be sort of the obvious analogy is like the Deadpool of the DC universe. But I like characters that don't take things so seriously, especially in the DC universe, which I feel is a lot more sometimes rigid, if that makes sense. And to have someone be able to kind of poke fun at that would be fun. So yeah, I will happily do a Black Label 4-issue Ambush Bug series at any time. That or John, the series that you and I are going to do, the Batman : Dumb. You have the missing piece, which I certainly didn't have, is having Alfred be the smart one. Is that's got legs.
Yeah. Well, fine. You guys can't have any part in me and Rob's Condiment King series. It's out there now. Don't worry, Rob. We're gonna
all-star Condiment King.
All-star. You see, he's the ideas man, and I think I could get into the complexity of Condiment King as a character. But so we've taken up so much time, so I think we better wrap up now. So my final question of the panel, John, this is to you. What's it like all these years later, seeing your work live on, like in the Suicide Squad, and then seeing all these new amazing writers come on and work on the characters that you basically had a hand in bringing to life? What's that like?
I'm delighted because it means that the stuff that I initiated has legs, and other people can come in and bring in their own take on it. Can spin and find more things to do with it than I ever would have, because everybody brings their own outlook into it. So very idea that the squad continues to live on. There's very few comics from the 80s that, or that began in the 80s, or characters that began in the 80s that that have hung around this long, let alone have 2 movies made out of it.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be an amazing film, and not amazing feeling. Sorry. But yeah, no, and I don't think we could end on a better note. It's been such a pleasure having you all on. Before we wrap up, John, are you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anything
I'm still on Facebook. I can be found there.
And anything you'd like to promote? I believe you had a Kickstarter from a while ago.
Yeah, actually, I've had 2 Kickstarters done. One is Kros, Hallowed Ground with Tom Mandrake. It combines vampires, vampire hunters, and the Battle of Gettysburg. And then Jan Duursma, who did so many Star Wars comics with me, we've done our own combination of space opera and magic called Hexer Dusk. And the first one of that is out, and we're working on a second. So I can either be found, I think, on Kickstarter or Indiegogo.
Absolutely, and that's amazing. So Rob, I believe you have a new comic coming out soon from AWA called Out.
Yeah, that's you can order that now. It's a create your own book, and it's basically the Great Escape. But what if there was a vampire in the camp with the prisoners? But it's historical and vampires, much like yours, John.
Oh.
But yeah, and I've got I think out today actually the Hershey disease graphic novel by myself and Simon Fraser, which is the Judge Dredd universe. I think is in shops either today or tomorrow. I forget. So. But yeah, those are the 2 more recent things, I suppose.
Amazing. And Robbie, I believe people can check you out on. Oh, sorry, Rob, you're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
I'm on Twitter too much, probably. I'm at RobWilliams71.
Website? Do you have a website?
I'm updated it for some time, but robwilliamscomics.co.uk, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Robbie, are you on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anything like that?
I'm on the Twitters.
Yeah.
Also, probably too much. R. Thompson 1138.
So the key to working on the Suicide Squad is be on Twitter too much. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Yeah. But so Robbie, everyone can go pick up issue 6 from their local comic book store.
Yes, that's correct. And we have an annual coming out at the end of the month, which is a double-sized and a lot of big reveals, a lot of sad face emoticons for some characters, and some punching as well.
Well, hey, you already ripped out my heart with Branch, so you can just put it back.
That's true. That's true, and I will do so again. Whoever you love, don't get comfortable.
Here's my idea for an original character, Branch Part 2. You know, it's basically Branch, but a perfect copy, except it's Branch. You know.
There you go. Yeah, there's a seed of an idea there. Yeah, absolutely.
There we go. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out everyone on this panel. You can go pick up any Suicide Squad comics from your local comic book store. I have some Ostrander stuff here, which you can pick up, or you can pick up some of Rob Williams stuff. And of course, Robbie Thompson's. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Go read the Suicide Squad. Comment down below who your favorite member is. To my 1 billion subscribers that I most definitely have, if anyone asks. But yeah, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Please donate to National Deaf Children's Society. Links that in the description as always. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you on next video, and I'll talk to everyone right here now. But yeah, I'll see you on the next video.